Lately I've been thinking a lot about the recently announced Wolverine game. I think I speak for a lot of us when I say that I didn't see that game coming, let alone from Insomniac. Those guys, they like to keep busy. But now that the hype has settled down a bit, it got me thinking about what this game could or should be. I know a lot of you are gonna disagree with me, but for a while I felt that I'm not exactly yearning for a new Wolverine game. As excited as I am for Marvel's Wolverine, I'm much more interested in an X-Men game. I think that's the more interesting and challenging project to tackle. The last good X-Men game we got was X-Men Legends 2, and I still want that superhero team ensemble co-op experience done right. I'm not gonna beat a dead horse here, but Marvel's Avengers wasn't it. And Ultimate Alliance 3 left a lot to be desired. I've yet to play that video game to push the co-op dynamic to a new, ambitious level. We've seen single player games make strides with aspects like cinematic presentation with games like The Last of Us, engaging, hardcore, and precise combat with the Souls game, dynamic moment-to-moment gameplay and player agency in games like Breath of the Wild, but games that are categorized under co-op tend to fall into these formats that don't exactly shake the ground. We've got the Left 4 Dead and World War Z style linear level-to-level game where you take on waves of enemies. You got the top-down dungeon crawlers like Diablo and X-Men Legends 2, and I love those kinds of games. I think they have a lot for the player to mess around with. Things like, your character build, your role in the team. Are you going to be a healer, a tank, support, loot, expansion packs with, kind of building on the game. But that's where things get kind of dangerous for a modern Diablo style dungeon crawler, because it starts to resemble, I feel like it can easily fall into the trap of games as a service, and please, not again. And this is kind of a selfish and personal preference, but I would want a new X-Men game to have a more cinematic presentation. As cool as it would be getting a modern and spiritual successor to X-Men Legends, I'd be lying if I said I haven't been waiting for that Spider-Man PS4 and Arkham Knight level X-Men game. Survival sims are another kind of co-op game we get a lot today, but doesn't exactly make sense for an X-Men game. Just thought I mentioned that. Whatever the hell you would call Monster Hunter and Dauntless, right? I guess action RPG, but even that is too vague a term to describe those games. They are a very specific kind of co-op game, and I think that's where things get interesting. I've never played a Monster Hunter game, so this is purely from an outsider's perspective. But from what I've seen, those games offer a true co-op experience. It's about working together as a team, using your strengths, and coordinating in the best possible way to take down a massive threat. And that's the kind of approach I want applied for an X-Men game. And I don't mean just take Monster Hunter and slap an X-Men skin on it, although that could work, right? And a Monster Hunter style X-Men game where you're taking down like big ass sentinels, and what other big X-Men villains are there? I guess Juggernaut, the Blob, although the Blob is big, but he's not like Monster Hunter big. Apocalypse, yeah, he can shapeshift into a bigger form. I guess there aren't that many big X-Men, like physically big X-Men villains. But that's kind of the philosophy and dynamics I want in a new X-Men game, right? Where I'm really working together, where everyone is kind of doing a different thing, that best fits their role. Again, I've never played a Monster Hunter game, but I imagine this is what it's like. I don't want to just be thrown into an open room with a bunch of enemies and we all mindlessly mash square until all the enemies are dead, right? That's turn off your brain kind of thing. I want something more interesting. Not to sound pretentious, but I think the reason why games like Spider-Man, Marvel's Spider-Man and Arkham Asylum are so highly regarded is because they capture the essence of those characters through their game mechanics. Hulk Ultimate Destruction is the perfect Hulk game because holding down square and charging down your fist and then smashing a tank to bits makes you feel like the powerhouse Hulk is, right? It's Hulk distilled into a game mechanic. And I want that for X-Men, Avengers, Fantastic Four. And to bring this back to Wolverine, I feel like we've gotten the distilled Wolverine experience through X-Men the official game. Now, of course, I'm talking about X-Men Origins Wolverine. That game made us feel what it's like to savagely cut down through enemies with Wolverine's adamantium claws. So, is Insomniac just gonna do that again, but with a more premium presentation? Right, like you can picture what Marvel's Wolverine is gonna look like. It's gonna be a third-person action game with the camera up close to the player character, like The Last of Us, Resident Evil 2, or God of War. I actually think this game is gonna be very similar to God of War 2018. Placing my bet now. But yeah, like a third-person action game with QTEs and moments where you're forced to slowly walk as your character talks to another character. A variation of the detective mode where it's, Wolverine's feral senses highlighting objectives and things you can interact with. The usual things we come to expect from the prestigious PlayStation exclusives. And I'm sure it's going to be really well written, but that's not what I need from a Wolverine video game, right? If I want that, I have the comics, I have a movie, I have the animated shows. I want an experience that can only be found in a video game. I remember the time I took my first dive off a rooftop in Spider-Man 2, shot that web line, and felt, it's gonna sound corny, but magic. I want that for every comic book video game. I believe that every superhero has that at least one aspect that if a video game hones in on it, it will make their video game feel special and unique. This is why a lot of superhero games from the mid-2000s are often considered to be trashy, because they're generic beat-em-ups that don't do anything special to represent the characters you're playing as. And like I said before, X-Men Origins Wolverine broke away from that. It achieved in making us feel like Wolverine. It's essentially a God of War clone, but that God of War gameplay style just so happens to perfectly fit Wolverine. But it does have a unique gameplay mechanic that I've never seen in any other video game, and that's Wolverine's lunge ability, right? Like being able to leap across the level and stab your enemies in the chest with your claws. It makes you feel that ferocity that should be prominent when playing as a character like Wolverine. And the whole game is bolstered by other mechanics, like how durable you are, the real-time healing, the violence. I guess what I'm trying to say is that Wolverine had his Spider-Man 2 and Arkham Asylum moment. And Insomniac's Wolverine is probably going to be a more polished, cinematic, premium version of that, or God of War. But God of War 2018 this time, I'm telling you, I have a strong feeling it'll be like God of War 2018. We'll see. And that's okay. Trust me, I'm just as excited as you are for this game. I'm sure it's going to be great. But with superhero games now going through kind of a resurgence, I want other characters that haven't had their Spider-Man 2 or Arkham Asylum moment to have a chance. I really hope I'm not coming off as negative in this video. I mean, it's Wolverine. Of course I'm excited. Are you kidding me? So let me end this on a positive note. What aspect of Wolverine's character would you like this game to encapsulate as a game mechanic that you think hasn't been nailed before? Like I said, I think X-Men Origins nailed what combat as Wolverine should feel like, but one thing I would like this new game to build on is the ability to climb on walls using your claws. We've seen Wolverine games do this in the past. X-Men Origins let you do it, but it was only on certain walls. I think this new game should let you climb anywhere with your claws. Very similar to how Breath of the Wild lets you climb on almost anything. I think that could add some interesting dynamics when it comes to traversing a level. But again, yeah, let me know what you would like to see from this new Wolverine game. So again, look, it's not that I'm not excited for your game. It's just that, wouldn't you want your friends to be there too? Gene, Hank, Scott? Forget I said anything, pal. Tell you what, I'll buy this round.
You know, you're alright, bub.
Yeah, now I'm alright, after I offer to buy your beer.